Whatever tables you are planning to merge, you need to ensure all the tables contain similar structure. And in Informatica Union Access, Union All. In Informatica Union Access, Union All. What are the different groups in Union transformation? See, what you are doing in Union, you are merging n number of tables. That means n number of input groups, right? What are the different groups in Union transformation? N number of input groups, but one output group. That's it. Okay, and we discussed about sequence generator. Sequence generator is a passive transformation which is used to generate sequence IDs for every insert. Okay. The default port in sequence generator transformation are current value and next value. Can you add any ports in sequence generator? No. Which port you'll pass out? Next value. What is the logic behind next value? Current value plus increment by. So this is what we discussed yesterday. Today I would like to talk something about session properties. So in the very first session we discussed a session is a set of instructions. A session is a set of instructions which tells us how to execute the mapping. A session is a set of instructions which tells us how to execute the mapping. As you know, session contains mapping, mapping contains source and target. Okay. Who will write insert statements? See, you design a mapping, that is fine. You design a mapping, that is fine. You are extracting the data, you are transforming the data, and you are loading the data. But someone has to write insert statements into this table, right? If you open the log file, you can clearly see insert into table, table name, and this all will be into the values. This all links will be into the values. So what query you write generally? Insert into table, table name, values, bracket open, all these columns you get, see, data flows through links, right? That's the reason you are giving the link. So integration service will write all these insert scripts. But where can I see that? If you double click the session, if you double click the session, click on properties, you can clearly see here as treat source rows as insert. That means what is happening? Session is writing insert statements into your target table. Okay. If you want to insert, you can go for insert, delete. Whatever record exists, it deletes, and whatever record exists, it go for update. Data driven, I'll explain you later. Okay. And one more thing. In database, after inserting the records into target table, someone has to commit the query, right? After inserting the data into target table, someone has to commit the query. If you only write insert statements, if you are not going to commit the data, what is going to happen? Everything, like at the time you are in, you can see the data and no one else can see the data. At the time you just get log off, everything will get rolled back, right? So someone has to write commit statements. Okay. If you see here, there is some concept called as commit interval, right? What is the default commit interval in Informatica? 10,000. The default commit interval in Informatica is 10,000. Okay. See, in database, after every insert statement, you can fire a commit statement. Commit is nothing but permanently storing the data into database. After every insert statement, you can fire a commit statement, or else after 10 insert statements, you can fire a commit statement, or else at the end of all insert statements, you can fire a commit statement. But at some point of time or at any point of time, you need to fire a commit statement. If you are not going to fire a commit statement, once you are logged off and log in back again, you can't see the data. Everything will get rolled back. Okay. So commit interval, a very simple answer. A commit interval is the interval at which Informatica server commits data into the target table based on the commit types. A very simple answer. A commit interval is the interval at which Informatica server commits data into the target table based on commit types. What are the different commit types in Informatica? What are the different commit types in Informatica? Source-based commit, target-based commit, user-defined commit. Very simple. What is commit interval? A commit interval is the interval at which Informatica server commits data into the target table based on commit types. The different types of commits in Informatica are source-based commit, target-based commit, user-defined commit. What is target-based commit? What is target-based commit? What is the default commit in Informatica, guys? The default commit in Informatica is what? What is the default commit interval in Informatica? 10,000. Okay. First of all, let me explain you what is source-based commit. Okay. It's very simple. Let us assume from source I am getting 100 records and my commit interval is 10. So what you understand? Generally commit interval, it's an interval at which Informatica server commits data into the target table, right? If I put source commit as source, if I put commit type as source and commit interval as 10, what is going to happen is after every 10 insert statements, after every 10 insert statement, a commit will be fired. See, simple as statement, COMMIT. A commit will be fired. So, if you have 100 records in source, how many commit intervals Informatica will tell? 10 times, right? So, it's very simple definition. Source based commit. Informatica server commits data into the target table based on commit interval. Informatica server commits data into the target table based on commit interval. That's it. It's a very simple answer. What is source-based commit? Informatica server commits data into the target table based on commit interval. Now, what is target-based commit? Informatica server commits data into the target table irrespective of commit interval. What do you understand by this? Irrespective of commit interval. Source-based commit, whatever interval you define, based on that interval, it commits the data. Actually, I'm having some throat infection. That's the reason I'm speaking a bit low today. Okay. So source-based commit is something which commits the data into target table based on a commit interval. Target-based commit, it commits the data into the target table irrespective of commit interval. Then what will be the next question? Then on what basis it commits the data, right? Okay. Prior to discuss this, I would like to tell you something. In Workflow Monitor, if you see, okay, who performs ETL functionality? Sorry, who performs ETL functionality? Integration service, right? There are two processors in integration service. There are two processors in integration service. They'll ask you, what are the different processors in integration service? You know, ETL functionality is done by integration service. That is true. The next question will be, what are the different processors in integration service? What are the different processors and integration service? There are two processors. One is called as load manager, other one is called as data transformation manager. There are two processors in integration service. One is called load manager and other one is called data transformation manager. Data transformation manager. This can also be called as DTM LM. Load manager, DTM. Then what are their roles? There are two processors. What are their roles? Okay. Whenever you execute the workflow, in the back end, integration service performs extraction, transformation, loading. But the very first process in integration service is load manager. So what load manager do? It checks all the validations. What do you mean by validations? Which user is executing the workflow? Does that user has an execute privilege? Which repository that user is connecting? Whatever code user is trying to execute, is that code a valid code? If source is a flat file or target is a flat file, is he defined the file path correctly? If source is a flat file, does he define the file directory path properly? If source is a database, are the relational connections which given by him are correct? These all validation rules it will check. Once all these validation rules are fine, it triggers DTM process. DTM, the name itself is telling you, Data Transformation Manager. When the DTM process is triggered, it creates three threads. reader thread, transform thread, writer thread. Nothing but extracting the data from source system, transforming the data as per the business requirement, and load the data into target system. Okay. The different processes, there are two processes in integration service. One is called load manager, other one is called DTM. Whatever load manager do, it writes into the workflow log file. Whatever load manager do, it writes into the workflow log file. You have two log files, right? One is called workflow log file, other one is called session log file. Whatever load manager do, it writes into the workflow log file. If you observe here, what you can see here, LM stands for once all the validations are fine, then only it triggers the session. Then only it triggers the session. And what all DTM process do, it writes into the session log file. These two log files are very, very important. One is called as workflow log file, other one is called as session log file. What is session log file, guys? Whatever Informatica do, it writes into the log file. That's the reason you need to analyze, you try to analyze the log file. This is very, very important because whatever Informatica do, it writes into the log file. If you have any issues, you can easily backtrack it looking at the log files. So log files plays a very key role. Okay, so you understand what are the different processes in integration service. One is called as load manager, other one is called as DTM process. And it's very much clear what load manager do and what DTM do. Okay, here if you see, there is something called as stop abort, right? This is a very regular interview question. Okay, you have executed a workflow, but after some time you notice that what workflow you triggered, that is unfortunately it got triggered. You are not supposed to trigger that workflow. Then immediately what you do, you go to the workflow monitor and you manually stop the workflow, right? A very regular interview question. What is the difference between stop and abort? What is the difference between stop and abort? Okay, whenever you stop a workflow, what is going to happen is whenever you stop a workflow, you have to tell all these things. Integration service contain two processes, load manager, DTM, load manager do all these things. DTM create three threads. After telling this, you need to add on like this. When you stop a session, your reader thread will be immediately killed, but your writer thread will be open for 60 seconds. In the 60 seconds, whatever records are there in commit interval, it will get committed and it will kill the session. Very simple. DTM, what I told, it creates three threads: reader thread, transform thread, writer thread. Nothing but abstraction, transformation, loading. When you stop a session, your reader thread is immediately killed, but your writer thread will be open for 60 seconds. In that 60 seconds, whatever records are there in commit interval, okay, that will be committed and it will kill the session. When you abort a session, your reader thread as well as writer thread both are killed immediately. You just need to understand one point. See, technical real time stop will take the same time, abort will take same time, but as interview prospective, they'll ask you what is the difference between stop and abort. You just need to tell, see, stop, it has a 60 seconds buffer time. In that buffer time, whatever records are there in commit interval, it will commit and it will kill the session. Abort, there is no buffer time. Immediately reader thread, writer thread, both are killed immediately, right? That is the difference between stop and abort. Okay. Now let me come to the point. I was talking about target based commit. I was talking about target based commit. Okay, guys. So if you remember the first session, I told you that when you execute the workflow, integration service connects to the repository service connects to the repository database and extracts the complete code, whatever you develop, and gets into the integration service buffer. Looking the code in the buffer, it performs extraction, transformation, loading, right? Buffer. That buffer has some size. Here he has defined as auto, but it can hold 10,700 records. Basically, that buffer is nothing but a temporary memory storage area. Earlier to 8, there was some 512 MB, but they have made it to auto. It's extendable. Okay, so it can hold somewhere around 10,700 records. Okay, okay. What is target based commit? Whenever you run a session with a target based commit, Informatica server commits data into the target table irrespective of commit interval. Whenever you run a session with a target-based commit, Informatica server commits data into the target table irrespective of commit interval. Then what basis is commit? First, it tries to fill the writer buffer. First, it tries to fill the writer buffer. Once the writer buffer got filled, then only it commits the data into target table. Okay. Let us assume my buffer capacity, my buffer, a memory storage area. My buffer capacity is 15 records. It can hold 15 records. And my commit interval is 10. From source, I am getting 100 records. Let us assume. Now you executed the workflow. Even though the commit interval got reached, it won't commit. Okay? It will try to fill the writer buffer. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Your writer buffer got filled. Then all the 15 records are committed. Whereas when you go for source-based commit, as soon as your commit interval is reached, it commits the data. But target-based commit, it commits irrespective of commit interval. It tries to fill the writer buffer. Once the writer buffer got filled, then only it commits the data into target table. Okay. What is the default commit in Informatica? Yep, it's a target-based commit. The default commit in Informatica is target-based commit. Now, I would like to tell you some important commit, that is user-defined commit. What are the different commit types in Informatica? Source-based commit, target-based commit, user-defined commit. What is the default commit in Informatica? Target-based commit. Okay. What is user-defined commit? User-defined commit. Who is the user here? We are the users, right? Who are the users here? We are the users. So on your condition, you can commit the data. On your concern, you can commit the data. User-defined commit. Whatever user is defining, based on his conditions, you can commit the data, right? So what is user-defined commit? User-defined commit comes into the picture when you work with a transformation called as transactional control transformation. How a user-defined condition? How a user defined, see, the name itself is telling you user defined condition. Then how a user define? He defines using a transactional control transformation. What is transactional control transformation? A transactional control transformation is an active transformation which is used to commit the data into target tables based on user defined conditions. Based on user defined conditions. Whenever you work with the transactional control transformation, at the session level, commit type will be user defined and you can't edit that commit type. This was an interview question asked 1 year back saying that I'm using a transactional control transformation and at the session I define user defined, but after some time I don't want to commit the data based on user-defined conditions. I want to commit the data based on source base. So what happened? I just changed user-defined to source. What happens? Does my session get succeeded or fails? See, boss, it's a very good question. Whenever you define a transactional control transformation in the mapping, here commit type will be user-defined and this will be in a disabled mode. This will be in a disabled mode. What do you understand? What do you understand? Like, it's in a disabled mode. That means you can't edit anything. You don't have a privilege. So interviewer just want to know how good you are with transactional control transformation. So whenever you define a TC at the session level, you can't edit it. It will be in a disabled mode. Okay? That's the question. Now let me explain you. It's a very simple. When I work with transactional control transformation, you don't have a commit interval here because I'm not going to commit the data based on interval. I'm going to commit the data based on a user-defined condition. See, it's very simple. Instead of committing the data based on source or target or based on a commit interval, I'm going to commit the data based on a condition. Whatever condition, whatever condition I require, I would like to commit the data based on that thing. It's very simple. What I want to do, it's very simple. If an employee salary is greater than 5,000, I would like to commit the data into target table. And if an employee salary is less than 5,000, I would just like to get rollback. You can ask me a question. Why you think we really require a transactional control transformation here? Can't I do with filter transformation? Yes, you can do it, but filter transformation, if you define and if you don't use a user defined commit, it commits based on user defined conditions. Let us say I have a 1 lakh records. So it commits based on an interval. I don't want to commit based on an interval. I want to commit based on a condition. For that reason, I'm going for transactional control transformation. I can also do with filter, but committing will the committing the data into target table will vary. If you work with filter, you can define either source based or target based, and on an interval basis or a buffer basis, it commits the data. I don't want to do in that way. I want to commit based on a condition. Okay, and I want to roll back the data if the condition is not met. Then I have to go for transactional control. This is not really very much important transformation, but in interviews they'll ask you. Okay, guys, let me create a target instance first. Let the target instance be so same as an employee table structure. In real time, you are not going to create any table structure. You'll get the table structures. You just need to know how to load the data into those table structures. That's it. Generate, execute SQL. Our databases. Okay, a table got created. Save it. Okay, now I want to commit the data if an employee salary is greater than 5,000, or else I want to roll back. You understand what is rollback, right? It won't insert the data into target table. Instead of that, it will get back to the source system. What is the default condition in transactional control transformation? The default condition in transactional control transformation is TC continue transaction. The default condition in transactional control transformation is TC continue transaction. What do you mean by TC continue transaction? The TC continue transaction is something which commits the data into target table row by row. What do you understand? For every insert statement, a commit will be fired in the target system. That is called row by row committing the data, right? See, as soon as the record inserts into the target table, COMMIT. Again, insertion of record, COMMIT. Again, insertion of record, COMMIT. What do you understand? For every record, it commits the data into target table. For every record, it commits the data into target table. So the default condition in transactional control transformation is TC continue transaction. Okay. But I don't want to commit each and every record into the target table. What I want to do, on a condition, I want to commit. So what is my condition? Informatica if. Generally, you say if, but in Informatica, you need to say Informatica if. Click on ports. Ports, columns, attributes, fields, values, all are same. Informatica if salary greater than or equal to 5,000, then what I want to do? I want to commit the data. And you need, see, just click on variables. Here you have something called as built-in. Click on this. You just follow these things, okay? If an employee salary is greater than 5,000, commit after. When you practice it with commit before, rollback before, and see what you get the output, okay? If an employee salary is greater than 5,000, commit after or else roll back after. That means less than 5,000 will roll back, okay? Wild edge. You understand, right? The default condition in transactional control transformation is TC continue transactions. Okay, using these functions, you can format the data of whether you want to commit or roll back, etc. You can play the data, apply, okay. Now see, when I define a session, you can't see commit interval, and the default commit type will be user defined, and you can't edit it. Now when I create a session, you can't see commit interval, and commit type will be user defined, and that is will be not in a editable mode. Okay. No, no, that's what I'm trying to tell you. When you create a session, you have a user defined, and that will be in a non-editable mode. You can't change it, and you don't see any commit interval here. See here, double click, click on the properties. Can you see any commit interval here? And what is the commit type? Can I change this? So this is what an interviewer asked me. I'm working with a transactional control transformation, but after some time, I don't want to commit the based on user-defined conditions, so I iterated into source-based commit. So what happens to my session? See, boss, when once you define a TC, you can't edit it. Okay, that is a point. Bulk, let it be normal. I'll explain you this. This is a very important question. What is the difference between bulk load and normal load? Okay, you can clearly see in the log file. Okay, you can clearly see in the log file. Oh, generally what's happening here is in my source I have only 107 records. If you have more than 10,000 records, then what happens? You can see a commit after every 10,700 records. If you just like to see how this works, you keep source based commit, okay? And you put commit interval as 10 and you run the workflow. Just open the session log file. You can clearly see after every 10 insert statements, COMMIT will be filed. Just for your understanding. But now the buffer capacity can hold 10,700 records, but from in my source I have only 107 records, so you can't see the commit. So if you would like to see, then put the source based commit and put the commit interval as 10. Here, know what's happening, guys. Here it's committing based on the see. I did not went with target based commit. I went with user defined commit. So you can see here, right? User defined commit point. If you go with source based commit, you can see here source based commit and the commit interval is 10. It's a user defined commit, so it is committing the data into target table based on a user defined conditions. Okay, in this way you can see here, right, rollback. In the top you have seen see in the top you have seen commit, but in the down you are seeing rollback. Okay, clear, right? How many records are loaded? What is the like this many records are loaded? 58 commits has happened. Okay. So now you're clear with source based commit, target based commit, user defined commit. Okay. Now I'd like to tell you some more. See, whenever you run the workflow, what's happening in the backend? The log files are getting created. The log files are getting created, right? The log files are getting created. What are the log files? Workflow log file, session log file. If someone asks you, okay, why you think log files are created? For two purposes. One is if anything got happened wrong, to backtrack the issue, you require a log file because whatever a tool do, you have to identify where it has made an issue. And another thing is, if a client escalate to you saying that this particular customer has not reached to my end system, you have not monitored it properly. Could you please tell me what happened to this record? Then what proof you have? You can look at this log files and you can tell, see, whatever records came to my machine, everything I processed, so no issues from my end. So how can you show him that? You can send him the log file and you can show him source success rows, target success rows, right? Okay. Now my end user asked me, Okay. So guys, how many times I ran this session? I ran it for more than 4 5 times. Then here you see only the latest log file, right? Here you see only the latest log file, one which you run most recently, right? But I would like to, I would like to show the recent 5 log files. I would like to capture the recent 5 log files. Generally, where are the log files captured? The log files are captured where you install Informatica. I installed Informatica in E drive. E drive, Informatica 9.5, server, InfaShade, sys logs. Here the log files are created. Okay, but the thing is, log files are every time get overwritten. You can see only one log file at a time. Prior to this, I would like to tell you something. What are the different tabs in Workflow Monitor? What are the different tabs in Workflow Monitor? The different tabs in Workflow Monitor are Grand Chart and Task View. What is the difference among both? In Grand Chart, you can see only the latest session execution. In the Grand Chart, you can see only the latest session execution. In the Grand Chart, you can find the run statistics of only the latest session execution. Whereas in Task View, you can see a session's previous 20 executions. You can see a session's previous 20 executions. How many times you have run this workflow? One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In this way, you can see the previous 20 executions. Then you can ask me a question. Vamshi, if you want to see the previous log files, here you can see only the latest log file. If you like to see the previous log files, go to the task view and open it. But the thing is, the log files get override. In all the log files, you have only one log file with the latest log file. Then how can I see the previous 5 log files? In that scenario, what you need to do is, are you following me? See, I told you in task view you can see the 5 log files, but no, the log file gets override. You have only one log file at any point of time. Then how can I see the previous 5 log files? There's an option you need to enable. What is that option? Let me show you. The option what you need to enable is save session log for what is by default. If you put here 5, then what is going to happen? The in workflow monitor you can see only the latest log file, but in the directory path, in the log file directory path, you can see 5 recent log files got created. You understand, right? No, boss, not 5 log files. Whatever log file Informatica has created, I want to capture each and every log file. Can't I achieve that? Yes. In that scenarios, instead of keeping save session log by session runs, what you need to put? You need to put session timestamp. When you put this, what is going to happen? In the back end, your log file will be created with underscore dd mm yy hh miss. If you run a session for 100 times, 100 log files are created in the back end. But okay, which option do you think you'll keep it in real time in production environment? Do you save the log files or do you save all the log files? Which option you go for? Any guesses? No, you won't save the log file. You go for save session log by 0 only. Why? Because if you save all the log files are stored where? In the directory path. Cache files are stored where? In the directory path. At the time you execute the job, there are some log files which are created for every execution in the backend. If you store each and every log file, what is going to happen? Your directory's path will be going to fill. Once your directory path is filled, then the log files and the cache files are not created. Then what happens? Your session fails, throwing an error, overflow conversion error. The directory is filled. I can't create the new log files. For that reason, you won't enable save session log by timestamp. When you get issues, then in that case you'll go for that. But generally you put log file as 0 only. Only the latest log file you'll save it. If you get a requirement, then you have to store the previous log files. Instead of saving it through timestamp, it's better to save it through last 5 executions, last 3 executions like that. Okay. So the different tabs in Workflow Monitor are Grand Chart and Task View. What is the difference? In the Grand Chart, you can see only the latest execution, whereas in Task View, you can see the previous 20 executions. And we discussed something about how to capture the logs, right? And one more very, 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 very important interview question. Here, what you can see, guys: source success rows, source fail rows, target success rows, target fail rows. What do you mean by source fail rows? You are extracting the data from source, but let us assume in my source table I have 10 records. I extracted 10 records from source, but only 8 records are read, and 2 records I'm not able to extract. That is called source fail rows. Target success rows. 8 records has to load, but 8 has not loaded. 2 records got failed. Only 6 has loaded. That is called target fail rows. At the time of insertion data into the target table, whatever records are getting rejected or whatever records has not loaded into the target table, that particular count you can see here. Now the question is, in some scenarios, even if you get target fail rows, your session will be succeeded. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? Your session is succeeded, but when you open get run properties, you could see some records went into rejection. If that happens, what is going to happen? You are missing a valuable customer informations. So that is not accepted. In real time, not even a single record should be rejected. If a single record is rejected, then you are missing a valuable business information, right? Even if a single record is rejected, you are missing a valuable business information. So I need to ensure not even a single record is getting rejected, right? So in the session, there's an option. In the session, there's an option. That option is called as, it's a very regular asked interview question. That option is called as stop on errors. By default, what is that? By default, what is that? Stop on errors. If you put here one, what is going to happen? Even if a single record got rejected, your session will fail. Even if a single record got rejected, your session will fail. This is a very, 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 very important interview question which is asked in interviews. Okay? I would like to fail my session even if a single record got rejected. What is that option? Stop on errors. Okay? Okay. Now, a very, very regular asked interview question. This is a very, very, very common interview question. What is the difference between bulk load and normal load? Even if you put 8 years of experience, this question is asked. This is a very, 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 very general asked interview question. What is the difference between normal load and bulk load? So, guys, in the very first session, if you remember, I told you something. If you want to install Informatica in your machine, you require a what? You require a database. Why you require a database? Because Informatica contains a 522 tables, but it doesn't contain a storage area. For that reason, you require database tables. In that 522 tables, one of the table name is OPB session. No need to remember this name. You can just say log table. OPB session recovery log. This is one of the tables. I told you, right? Whatever you do in Informatica, it's just a representation in GUI format. Everything will be stored in a database format, right? In a tabular format. Okay. There's one of the table called as OPB session recovery log. Okay. Whenever you run a session with a normal load, what is going to happen is it's very simple. You know what is row ID? Your row ID. In that, there's a database concept, right? For every insertion into the target table, a unique sequence ID is created in the backend. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not sequence ID. A unique numeric value will be created in the backend. That is called row ID. You can't see it. It is created in the backend. Okay. So what I'm trying to tell you, it's very simple, guys. Whenever you run a session with normal load, Informatica server commits data into the target table based on a commit interval. At the same point of time, it commits row ID into the log table. What you understand? In the log table, row IDs are committed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. In the target table, the data is going to commit. Okay. Let us assume I went with source based commit and my commit interval is 10. Okay. And I'm processing 100 records from my source. At 80th record, my session got failed. Okay. At 80th record, my session got failed. Okay. Now you open the log file, you have fixed the issue. When you restart the session again, do you want Informatica to run from the scratch or do you want Informatica to process from where it got failed? Obviously, one will tell process it from where it got failed. But to be very frank, in real time, you will run from scratch. You'll just truncate the data and you will run from scratch. But as an interview perspective, this question is expected. So as an interview perspective, you need to run the session from where it got failed. Okay, then how it happens? After you fix the issue, when you restart the job, it has to start from where it got failed. That means what? From 81, it has to start insert the records into the target table. But how it happens? Okay, so what is going to happen is when you run a session with normal load and when you enable this option, when you run a session with normal load and when you enable this option, what is that option? Resume from last checkpoint in the recovery strategy. When you run a session with normal load and when you enable this option, resume from last checkpoint in the recovery strategy, what is going to happen is, and when you run a session with normal load, Informatica server commits data into the target table. At the same point of time, Informatica server commits row IDs into the log table. If your session fails at any point of time, there is scope of recovery. After you fix the issue, when you rerun the job, what is going to happen is integration service connects to the repository service connects to the repository database and checks what is the last row ID committed in the log table. Repository service connects to the repository database and checks what is the last row ID committed in the log table and start loading into the target table maths of row ID plus 1. This happens when you run a session with normal load and when you put recovery strategy as resume from last saved checkpoint. So guys, when you run a session with normal load, there is a scope of recovery. Recovery means to execute the session from where it got failed. Then what is bulk load? What is bulk load? Whenever you run a session with bulk load, it just inserts the data into target table, but it won't insert any row ID into the log table. With this, what happens? Performance will be very fast because only one functionality is happening, just inserting the data. But if session fails at any point of time, there is no scope of recovery. But if session fails at any point of time, there is no scope of recovery. It's a very regular asked interview question. What is the difference between bulk load and normal load? Whenever you run a session with bulk load, Informatica server bypasses the database log. Whenever you run a session with bulk load, Informatica server bypasses the database log. That means what you understand. It just inserts the data into the target table, but no row IDs are committed into the log table. Performance will be very fast, but if session fails at any point of time, there is no scope of recovery. Okay. There are some checkpoints you need to remember whenever you go with bulk load. What are those checkpoints? Your load strategy should be only insert. Till now we have seen only insert, but apart from inserts, you have updates and others. So what I'm trying to tell you, whenever you run a session with bulk load, you need to ensure your load strategy should be only insert. And one more thing, whenever you run a session with bulk load, you need to ensure there are no indexes on the target table. I hope you know what is index. Index means what? Indexes are used to retrieve the data for faster purpose. If you don't define an index, what happens is for every record, it scans the complete table. See, a very simple common example is let's take an example of your book, some book. In the book, you have first page as a context area or a menu. If you don't have a context area, what you need to do? You need to search the complete table. Sorry, you need to search complete book for the respective chapter. If you have chapter 10 one or two page, then what you do? You directly go to one or two page, and from there you will start reading the book. In the same way, on a table, if index is not defined, then what happens? For every record, it has to scan the complete table, each and every record. This kills the performance. If you define an index, for the first record it will scan, and from the next record onwards, it will just pick the data from that block. Indexes are used to retrieve the data for faster purpose. Okay, indexes are used to retrieve the data for faster purpose. Okay, you know what is the functionality of primary key? What all things are created when you define a primary key on any column? When you define a primary key on a column, primary key doesn't allow nulls, primary key doesn't allow duplicates, and an index is created in the backend. Unique index, yeah. A primary key does not allow nulls, primary key does not allow duplicates, and an index will be created in the backend. So guys, what the point here is, whenever you run a session with bulk load, you need to ensure there are no indexes on the target table and there is no primary key defined. Why? Because if you define a primary key, then index will be defined. If index is there, bulk load doesn't support. Okay, now my interviewer will tell you. See, this is not. See, I don't know what functionality is there in Informatica, but my requirement is, this is a huge table. This contains a lot of data. I don't want you to run with normal load because if you run with normal load, it will take a lot of time. So I don't want to waste my time because this has to complete in a given time frame window. I want you to execute this job through bulk load. At the same point of time, I require indexes on the table because you are not the end system, right? After you load the data, reporting guys comes into the picture. If there are no indexes on your target table, then when reporting guy fire a query on your table to analyze the data, that query will take forever. I don't need that output. I want you to execute bulk load at the same point of time. I want indexes to be defined on the table what you load. Can't you achieve it? Yep. It's a regular interview question. So what is the question you understand? I want a session to be executed in the bulk load at the same point of time. I would like to have indexes defined on it. Can't I achieve this? Yes. Okay. So what you need to do technically, before loading the data into target table, you need to drop the indexes. You know what is the sequel to drop the index? Very simple. If you want to create index on a specific column, what query you write? Create index, index name on table name, bracket, column names. That's it. If you want to define an index on the table, you just write a query, create index, index name on table name, bracket, column name. If you want to drop the index, just write drop index, whatever index name you define, you need to give here. Drop index, index name. So guys, here what you need to do is before loading the bulk load, you need to drop the indexes, whatever there in your target table. And after the load got completed, you need to recreate the indexes. But who will do this? Is it a manual task? Is it a manual task? You understand what is manual task, right? Will you drop the indexes every time before loading the data, and will you recreate the indexes every time after the load got completed? You are not machines. You are human. You might miss someday. Then what happens? Your session will fail first of all if indexes are not dropped. So this should be an automated process, right? Tool has to drop the indexes before loading the data. Tool has to recreate the indexes after the data got loaded, right? You understand, right? Okay. There is some option called as target pre-SQL and target post-SQL. If you see here, when you run a session with bulk load or normal load, you have an option called as target pre-SQL and target post-SQL. So what you want me to explain? In the target pre-SQL, what query you need to write, guys? You need to write drop index, index name. In the target post-SQL, you need to write create index, index name. Okay, so what is the difference between normal load and bulk load? Whenever you run a session with normal load, Informatica server commits data into the target table. At the same point of time, it commits row ID into the log table. If your session fails at any point of time, there is scope of recovery if you enable an option resume from last save checkpoint. So how it happens? It connects to the repository database and checks what is the last row ID committed in the log table and start loading maths of row ID plus one. Okay. Bulk load. Whenever you run a session with bulk load, Informatica server bypasses the database log. It just loads the data into target table, but no row IDs are captured. Performance will be fast, but if your session fails at any point of time, there is no scope of recovery. Whenever you run a session with bulk load, you need to ensure few things. The load strategy should be insert and there are no indexes defined on the table. If indexes are defined, can't I achieve the bulk load? Yes, you can. There's an option called as target pre-SQL and target post-SQL. So using target pre-SQL and target post-SQL, you can drop the indexes before the load got completed and you can recreate the indexes. Okay, whatever I told you now, I just documented it. Let me show you. Whatever I explained today, everything I documented. This I have written. Okay, I'll send you this across. This is the way you need to create the index and drop the index. So today, what all things we covered? We covered uh, who inserts the data, how inserts happens, and how commits happen. What are the different types of commits? What is transactional control transformation, and what is the difference between bulk load and normal load? What are the different processes in integration service? What is the difference between stop and abort? Okay, these all questions we discussed. This all points we discussed today. And sorry, you asked me my source contain 10 records and I want to see 100 records in my target table. How that is possible,
Yeah,
right? It's very simple.
yeah, yeah.
Source, source qualifier, take router transformation, create 10 groups. In each group, you need to put filter condition as true. Then what happens? The 10 records will be split into 10 groups. Then you take union transformation and merge those 10 groups and pass it. Union, multiple inputs, one output. And you asked me a question saying that are there any records in the default group? No, there will be no records in the default group. Okay, this
Okay.
is what you asked me yesterday. And today you
Yeah.
ask me at the performance point of time, which one will be good? Definitely bulk load will be good because bulk load performance will be fast because it loads data into only a target table, but it won't insert any row IDs into the log table. In real time, most of the cases you go with bulk load only. See, in real time, no one cares. If a session fails, they'll run from the scratch again. But they go for bulk load because performance will be fast. If a normal load takes 8 hours, bulk load just complete in 4 to 5 hours. So bulk load plays a very key role. And the checkpoint is there should not be an indexes defined on the table when you go with bulk load. If indexes defined, there's an option called as target pre and target post. Using those pre-SQL, post-SQL, you need to drop the indexes, and after the load got completed, you need to recreate the indexes, right? Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Vamshi.
yeah. Sorry. Yeah, yeah. You can write drop index name semicolon, drop index name semicolon. In this way, you can write. How many SQL statements you want, you can write it here. It's not like that only one SQL. Drop index name semicolon, enter. Drop index name semicolon, enter. In this way, you can write it. Okay. Okay, guys, then that's for the day. I'll share you this recorded session and I'll share you the things which I documented here. Okay, so that you can go through it. Okay, this is very well I documented. You can just have a quick hands-on. Interview questions are asked in this TST file, definitely. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Vamshi.
yeah. Share just. Ni mail ID